Ted Lieu, congressional rock star, Twitter rock star, star of stage and screen, sexy liberal, in fact.
Yes.
Representative Ted Lieu, always a pleasure to say good morning, sir.
Good morning, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm fine. I asked before you got here how you work with these, what's the word to use, for Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and I don't know, Madison Cawthorn. I just, Congressman, I sincerely mean this, that I don't know how you work with a party that does not appear to be a governing party of any kind anymore. They do not appear to believe in the rule of law anymore. I just, even just yesterday's antics with Marjorie Taylor Greene screaming at Liz Cheney and Jamie Raskin. And, I guess we got, 9 Republicans only to vote to uphold subpoenas. Talk to us about just your general impression of yesterday.
Radical Republicans are dangerous. It's clear to me that Marjorie Taylor Greene has anger management and control issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you look at what's happening in Republican base, they're becoming radicalized, and that's why it's so important that we simply have to beat them at the polls next year.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about voting rights, though, because that's obviously, you've been talking about it and tweeting about it. You said the Freedom of Vote Act will restore the promise of democracy for all Americans. The Senate must pass this legislation to protect the fundamental right to vote and the dominance of dark money in politics, stop partisan gerrymandering. Our democracy is at stake. I think a lot of our base is really concerned about that I agree with you. It's the only thing to do is to vote. But, there's a lot of concern about them letting us vote. Where do you think there is any chance of a carve out on the filibuster for voting rights in the Senate?
That does depend on a couple U.S. senators who happen to be Democrats. I do think there is a chance. The good news is that every Democrat supports the Freedom of Vote Act, including Senators Manchin and Sinema. We gave Senator Manchin some time to try to round up 10 Republican votes to break a filibuster. That did not happen. So hopefully Senator Manchin now looks at the situation and concludes that the right to vote is so fundamental that he'll make an exception to the filibuster. That's what we're working on right now.
Oh, boy. I hope so. Well, speaking of which, I guess since you brought Senator Manchin up, obviously there's been a lot of reporting that he's threatened to leave the Democratic Party. He said that didn't happen. Then he sort of yesterday said, oh, well, he did talk about that. In yesterday's reporting is pretty, I guess there was a discussion between Senator Sanders and Senator Manchin. And Manchin, apparently, according to John Tester, Joe Manchin said, I'm comfortable with nothing in terms of the infrastructure bill. Chris Coons, who was also in the room, said Manchin said we shouldn't do it at all, and that the $3.5 trillion proposal will contribute to inflation. He said we already passed the American Rescue Plan. We should just pass the infrastructure bill and, pause for 6 months, which, of course, as you know, is not okay with congressional Democrats, particularly the progressives. Coons said significant progress was made in the meeting despite the tension between Manchin and Sanders. I want to believe that. Ted, I'm a naturally optimistical person, as you know. But Coons and Tester both said they remain hopeful Democrats will agree on the figure for reconciliation by the end of Thursday. But then Manchin said this isn't going to happen anytime soon. This is so stress-inducing for all of us. I can't imagine what it's like for you. What do you take from all this?
I've always believed that in politics, everything seems impossible until it happens.
Right.
And so it's hard to know with the reporting all over the place exactly what individual senators think or what they may have said. And individual senators also could change their minds from day to day. So I wouldn't put too much stock in the day-to-day news articles. As long as Senator Manchin is still talking to the White House, which he is, and they're talking extensively, I do think we will get to a deal pretty soon, and I do think both bills will get to President Biden's desk.
Oh, okay. You've made me happy. But let's talk about the subpoena and contempt.
Well, I just want to add, Senator Manchin understands that this is also critical to the entire Biden presidency.
Yeah.
And that itself is critical to making sure we don't become an authoritarian state. And so he also understands that democracy at stake.
Well,
and so I think he will work hard to get these two bills across to the president's desk.
I hope so, Representative. I mean, there still is a we the people. I know he's under a lot of pressure. Activists were there at his houseboat, saying, don't sink the party's agenda. Who will you throw overboard now? I know that several veterans just resigned from Senator Sinema's advisory board over, I think, I think it is. I think it's just hard for all of us to believe that two people can torpedo what, I don't know, in polling 70 to 80% of the American people want.
Absolutely, the Build Back Better agenda is extraordinarily popular, from universal preschool to tax credits for families with children to elder care and workforce development. Everything in that act is extraordinarily popular, and so hopefully the two senators will take that into account.
Yeah. So you, speaking of the contempt subpoena, you had tweeted about I believe it's your bill. You said, well, first of all, you said we can't allow individuals to disobey congressional subpoenas without consequences. So you have inherent contempt legislation. Tell us about that.
Thank you. Let me first say we should take a step back and ask the question, well, what is Steve Bannon hiding? Right? Of all the witnesses, he is the only one that is simply ignoring the congressional subpoena. And we can't have that happen, function as a democracy. If we can't enforce our congressional subpoenas, it's totally meaningless. So I'm very pleased the House, on a bipartisan basis, held him in contempt. I urge the Department of Justice to take this case and to prosecute it. My fear is that even if the Department of Justice takes the case and prosecutes it, what will happen is Steve Bannon will just litigate this the way that Thom McGahn litigated the subpoena case, and then 2 years later there'll be a decision.
No.
My inherent contempt bill would result in an immediate fine to witnesses who ignore congressional subpoenas of up to $100,000. And yeah, sure, they'll litigate that too, but they know at the end of the day, if they lose, they're on the hook for $100,000. So that flips the burden and puts a huge incentive on witnesses to comply. Yeah,
I agree with you. You just tweeted Congress should not need to depend on another branch of government to enforce our subpoenas, period, full stop. I say by any means necessary, use all the tools you have. This has just become a, like former President Trump, Representative, in my opinion, they just become a lawless party. They're just, again, as I was saying, not a governing party. We learn that over and over again every day, don't we?
Absolutely. And when the former president issued a statement yesterday saying that the insurrection was on November 3rd, not January 6th, that tells you where the Republican base is. They no longer believe in democracy.
Yeah. Speaking of the people you serve with, you had some thoughts on this. Madison Cawthorn, just take a listen and then we'll get your reaction.
Our culture today is trying to completely demasculate all of the young men in our culture. I mean, you can look at the testosterone levels in young men today, and they are lower than throughout all of history. And there's a lot of reasons for this that we can get into later. But, my friends, they're trying to demasculate the young men in this country because they don't want people who are going to stand up.
What?
And so I'm telling you, all of you moms here, the people who I said were the most vicious in our movement, if you are raising a young man, please raise them to be a monster.
That's horrifying.
Yeah. Ted, you tweeted more evidence that the Naval Academy was right in rejecting Madison Cawthorn, who lied about getting accepted by the Academy. America is an exceptional nation precisely because we don't raise monsters. I just feel like there not in our history has been a starker difference between the parties. Don't you think?
You may have seen that Madison Cawthorn earlier had released a video of him punching a tree.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that is sort of his view of what people should be doing. And my view is we should not be raising monsters. We should be telling our kids and our children that America is an exceptional nation precisely because we're not raising monsters. And what was even more horrifying was not only did he say that, but the people in the room cheered after he said that.
Yeah. Let's look at, you pointed out on Twitter, jobless claims fall again to a new pandemic low. Jen Psaki echoed you on Twitter for, Kevin McCarthy's responding to Kevin McCarthy's latest ridiculous attack on the economy. She said, let's do facts instead. Under Joe Biden, job growth is up 10 times over the end of the Trump-McCarthy economy. Unemployment claims down 60% plus, and 5 million more people are back to work. If the Republican leader wanted to help our economy, he would support our bill to invest in ports, roads, bridges, and jobs. And you also made a great point, Representative, on Twitter. You said the huge number of job openings across America exposes the racist lie that immigrants are somehow taking away jobs. Immigration grows our economy and is America's strength. As Reagan stated, we draw our people, our strength from every corner in every country in the world. There is this myth that they're trying to create about about worker shortages, right?
Absolutely. And now we know that the whole anti-immigrant hysteria of the Republican base was never about taking away jobs. It was just straight up racism. You notice they don't say that anymore about taking away jobs. They've now simply focused on, well, they're just replacing us, quote unquote us, even though we're all Americans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so they've just gone straight to race. And now we expose the lie that this was always about racism.